Hi guys, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint the miniatures from Talisman, the revised 4th edition. I like to paint them in batches, so I've got 5 miniatures that I'm going to paint up straight away. I'm going to do the assassin and the warrior and the priest, the wizard and the thief. So the first thing I do is I get files. I've used a flat file, a little rat tail or round file, and a little kind of triangular file, which I find will get into all of the places. And I'm just looking for any areas where the mould hasn't quite worked out, and I'm just going to use the files to clean up all of the miniatures. So once I've done that, I'll come back and I'll show you how I prime them. Okay, so now I'm ready to prime the miniatures. I'm going to use Army Painter Uniform Grey to prime them. I've been shaking this can now for 1.5 minutes and I'm in my open garage, so well ventilated. Got the miniatures on a little block so I can move them around and spray from different angles without touching the miniatures themselves. I've tested to make sure that it's spraying okay. Trick with spraying this is really to apply really thin coats. You can always put more on, but if you get too close you can obscure the detail. So I'm just going to spray really fine strokes across and then flip them around, do the different angles. That should be about right. Okay, so the next stage is to put a base coat on each of the miniatures. I'm going to use a standard detail brush for this one, standard brush. And I'm going to start with Barbarian Flesh, Army Painter Barbarian Flesh. I find that this is the best place to start because you can be quite messy with it, get into all of the little recesses around the neck, and then you can paint the other coats over it. It's better to do it that way around than trying to get the paint in there afterwards. So I always start with the flesh colour. I use just a little ready meals box with little compartments. I've got a bit of water in one and then a couple where I can mix my paints. So I'm just going to give the paint a bit of a shake and just put a little dab in my palette. I find it's better to thin the paint down a little bit. It's better to have it too watery than too thick, because again, if it's too thick it just obscures all of the detail. And then all I'm going to do is get in there and just paint all of the fleshy areas. So once I've done that, I will be back with the other base coats. This base coat is Barbarian Flesh. This base coat is matte white. This base coat is leather brown. This base coat is green skin. This base coat is pure red. And this base coat is matte black. Okay, so now I've got the base coats on the miniatures. What I'm going to do now is just go back in with a standard brush and a small detail brush. And I'm just going to make any corrections or just fill in where the paint hasn't quite covered the surface very well. So I'll be back when that's done. Here are the corrected miniatures. Okay, so now I've finished tidying up the miniatures. I'm going to add a bit of shade into them. So anything that isn't black, I'm going to apply Army Shader Strong Tone Wash to. It is really runny and you don't need to water it down at all. So all I'm going to do is take a standard brush and just apply that to any of the areas. I'm going to start with the face. If it is too much, you can always just take it off with the brush and what it will do is it will just run into those recesses and create shadow. So I'll be back when all of that's done. Here are the miniatures after the strong tone wash has been applied. Okay, so now the miniatures have had their wash. I'm going to go back in and just use the colours again and highlight all of the raised areas. Here are the highlighted miniatures. Now that the highlights are complete, I'm going to use the colours again and mix it with a little bit of white and just paint the very tips of places, so the knuckles, the nose, any areas like that. Here are the tinted miniatures. So now I'm going to use a method called dry brushing to paint the metal areas. It's also really good for hair and fur, but I'm going to use this one on this miniature of the warrior for the plate mail armour. So I'm going to use plate mail metal, greedy gold for some bits, leather brown for the thief's hair and moustache, and matte white for the wizard's beard. So just pop a little bit in your palette. And this time I'm not going to mix water with it. I want it to be as dry as possible, hence the name dry brushing. I'm going to use this brush, dry brush, but I'll also use the other ones for the smaller areas. And I'm just going to dab the brush in there and then use a bit of tissue paper to take most of the paint away. And then I'm going to drag that over the areas that I want that colour to be. So he's got a bit of armour here. So it's better to go light with this because you can always put more on. But all it will do is it will pick up on all of the raised areas. So I will be back when the miniatures are done. Here are the dry brushed miniatures. So the last stage is just painting details really. I'm going to paint a little emblem on the warrior's tunic. The eyes I paint black, then white, but leave a little outline of black, and then just a tiny little dot for the pupil. So I'll be back when that's done. Here are the detailed miniatures. Okay, so now the eyes and the detail's been done, I'm going to paint the base leather brown. Here the bases have been painted Army Painter leather brown. So I'm going to base the miniatures now. I've put a little squirt of PVA in my palette. I'm just going to water it down a little bit. And I'm going to paint the base where I want my sort of battlefield brown and my grass flock. I've also got some little swamp tufts which I'll apply to some of the miniatures, not all of them, because some of the bases don't have enough space. But paint this PVA on. Trying carefully not to get it on the boots. Okay, so when that's done, I'll wash my brush, grab a little swamp tuft out, and these just peel off a backing. Here, they're all Army Painter these. This one I'm going to just put on the front there, and you can use the end of your brush to just push it down into place. Then I'm going to dip the base in the brown battlefield, give it a tap, and that'll give it a sort of a rocky effect. Just to finish off, I'm just going to paint a few little bits of PVA on top, and here I'm going to put some grass areas with the flock. And that's pretty much it. Here are the based miniatures. Okay, so the last thing to do is to put some varnish on them. I'm going to put some Army Painter anti-shine matte varnish, and what it will do is it will help to protect the miniature, but it will also stop them from being so shiny. So with this, again, it's about thin coats. I'm going to put 2 to 3 thin coats on, and you need to be quite a long way away. And because it's on the block, I can turn it and do the other side. And just make sure that I'm getting all of the angles. So that's it, that's the miniatures finished. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. I'll be doing some more videos with some of the other miniatures from the Talisman set, so look out for those. Please subscribe and do comment in the box below. I'd love to know what you think and how I can improve.